What is going on, guys and gals? Brooklyn bound the raid scientist here, and today we have the full raid guide to the latest raid in Destiny 2's final shape, Salvation's Edge. This guide will walk you through each encounter, loadouts, strategies to have the most success, and a few other tips along the way. While I might not get my guides out immediately after the raid comes out, that's actually on purpose, as I want to make sure we fully understand encounter mechanics and the best strategies for each encounter before diving into an in-depth guide like this. These guides take a ton of time and effort, so if you haven't yet, please consider subscribing to the channel, or at least like the video, to give us some love. Alright, so first off, I'm going to quickly explain how to get an extra red border weapon at the end of the raid, as well as the raid mods if you do a full clear. Skip to the timestamp here in the description to get to the first encounter if you simply just want to learn how to do each encounter independently. So, as you load up the raid, you'll have a decent amount of traversing before you finally get to the first encounter. In this area is also a code for both the secret red border chest at the end of the raid and the code for the mods to the raid as well, which are also activated kind of like a red border weapon, being achieved at the end of the final boss. If you look at the third column on this wall, you're going to see 5 symbols. And if you look closely, they will resemble a square, circle, or a pyramid resonance that you're going to see throughout this raid. You read these symbols starting at the bottom and then actually work your way to the top. So the bottom symbol is 1, the top symbol is number 5. Symbols 1, 3, and 5 are used for the extra red border chest at the end of the raid. There are 3 rooms that match these to activate, and the symbol indicates what kind of resonance you need to lock the conductors in those rooms. I'll get to that in a minute. Symbols 2 and 4 are guided to be used to unlock the raid mods at the end of the raid. But you can't do these and unlock these until you've completed all 5 static encounter triumphs for the raid. Once someone in your fire team has done this, they can activate the resonance in rooms 2 and 4. So, let's cover all 5 rooms quickly before we start the encounters. Room number 1, used for the red border, is before the first encounter. As you're going up the separated staircase, jump over to the left-hand side, go through this opening, and then on the right, there will be a little hole in the ground you can slide under and enter to see 2 plates. You will bounce the charge back and forth until the resonance you need will spawn. One person will pick it up, and then shoot the conductor, and then step on the plate to lock it. You'll learn this mechanic in the first 3 encounters of this raid, but this is also where you will practice it. You need to lock the plate with the correct resonance here. So, if the first symbol was circle, then you need to pick up one of the circular resonance and shoot the conductor to lock it with circle. If you do this correctly, you'll activate the first room and be ready to do the next rooms later on. If you get the wrong resonance, it won't work. Room number 2, which is used for the raid mods, is also before the first encounter. When you head down these stairs and then turn to the right, you're going to see a labyrinth-looking set of stairs on the left. And in the middle set, there is a room to activate the conduits. Remember, as I said, you need to have completed the static triumphs for this raid to activate the chests to be able to activate the plates in this room. So if no one in your group has done it, you can just skip this because it's for the raid mods. Room number 3 is after the first encounter on the way to the second encounter. As you're going up these green platforms, look to the right and you will see this lattice with an opening in it. Jump through the opening and go to the right, and there will be a room in there where you can ping the buff back and forth, picking up the correct resonance and locking it in the conductor. The 4th room, which is also for the raid mods, is after the second encounter on the way up to the 3rd encounter. You will see on screen you're going to see these ledges with all this deadly resonance going up. It's kind of hidden in this alcove that you can't see unless you jump out and over. And the 5th and final room, or set of plates, is also before the 3rd encounter, after the secret chest. You're going to enter this really cool looking room with a bunch of the flying enemies and a bunch of branches and orange cubes. Right at the entrance, if you jump up on these orange boxes and branches, you will eventually see a set of plates up top, and this is the 5th and final room. As a quick refresher, remember rooms 1, 3, and 5 are to activate the red border chest, and rooms 2 and 4 are for the raid mods. Okay, so let's get into the encounters. The first encounter is Substratum. To prepare, you're going to want to have everybody on ad-clearing weapons and loadouts. Heavy machine guns do wonders here, and also having a precision weapon or good special weapon for tormentors and subjugators is great as well. I even sometimes recommend having somebody on Divinity if the Tormentors are giving you a problem, so keep that in mind. You're also going to want a few people on Overload, as there are Overload Minotaurs in this fight. Supers really aren't too important. Something best for survivability and nuking Tormentors is probably best, as well as clearing out adds. This encounter is just about quickly clearing through all of the different rooms, nuking Tormentors, and then doing some plate mechanics. You're going to want to pre-assign your team into 2 groups of 3 as well, because you're going to be splitting up for 2/3 of this fight or so. So, for the encounter, the goal is to complete 3 full rounds of mechanics, which I'll cover in a moment, depositing resonance into a chest in the middle room. The entire encounter is timed as well, as are the rest of the encounters in this raid, so get used to it, with the final shape looming debuff. Thankfully, in every encounter, there is a way to extend this timer. At the end of each round of this first encounter, you're going to be depositing resonance into a chest. The more resonance you deposit, the more time you're going to add back to your timer. It's about 20 seconds or so per stack of resonance. Alright, so what does a round of combat like where you have to survive 3 full rounds? Well, each round has about 3 steps. To start, deposit the single resonance on the ground into the chest to start the fight, and you'll immediately notice that 2 of the doors will open up with supplicants pouring out. Step 1 of this round is each team of 3 will take off separately into the open rooms and start clearing waves of Vex. There will always be typically a door that opens up very obviously in the middle of one of the walls, while the other door will open up typically hidden a little bit more in one of the corners, either up or down. This map shows the entire layout of this encounter, and it was a great guide that I found on Reddit. You want to be quick here as well. Rooms will eventually have a Hydra enemy called a Keeper of the Monolith, and killing this will allow a new door to open in the other team's room. So it's essentially you kill the Hydras to keep progressing for each of your teams. Enter the new rooms and keep slaying enemies, and eventually you will come across an Overload Minotaur. Killing him will give a tooltip on screen that says you are beckoned toward the center, and a Tormentor will spawn in the middle room where you started. Also, a bunch of doors will open up which will allow you quick access back to the middle room quickly without having to backtrack. At this point, everyone should quickly head back to the middle and melt this Tormentor ASAP to continue on. After it dies, step 2 of the round starts, where new rooms will open up for each of the 2 teams, and you'll literally repeat this entire thing again. Each team progressing through the rooms, clearing out the adds and the Hydras to open the doors for each other, and eventually taking out another Overload which spawns a second Tormentor in the middle to which you are beckoned. And then head back to the middle to kill it quickly. Now pay attention to the room that you were in where that Overload Minotaur died, because the third part of this round now begins where new doors will open up and a new mechanic will need to be executed, that you need to master now because you're going to be using it a lot. In each of these rooms you will notice an odd-shaped octagonal plate on the ground and a bunch of red lines running away from them. Each room has a plate and all of the red wires connect to each other as well. However, on this round, after ad clearing the second Tormentor, there are going to be 2 plates lit up and charged. Each team will have 1 in their area. The plate mechanic here is what is going to spawn the pyramidal resonances that you're going to need to pick up and deposit to extend your timer. So how is this done? Each group of 3 will now split up independently, with 1 player staying at the charged or glowing plate, and the other 2 players following the red lines to the adjacent rooms. You're going to essentially be playing a game of ping pong, where you bounce a charge from one plate to another plate and back. To do this, the person with the glowing plate will step on it, and they'll notice an electric charge shoot out in one direction through the lines towards one of the other rooms. This charge will eventually make its way to the plate in that room, causing that plate to glow once it's made it. The player in that room needs to wait until it lights up, indicating the charge on the plate is ready, and then step on the plate to send the charge back to where it came from, letting your teammate know that you've sent it. You will continue bouncing this charge back and forth between your plates for a handful of cycles. Note that once the charge reaches your plate and it starts glowing, you have a very short window to step back on it to send the charge back. Otherwise, the plates will deactivate and you'll be punished with a subjugator, which you don't want. So don't step on them too early, aka wait until the plate glows, and don't step on it too late, because you'll get a subjugator either way. Note that the third person on your team who doesn't get to do a plate, because the charge isn't coming to their direction, can come back and help the two players doing the ping-ponging with ads during this time. Remember that both teams will be doing this at the same time as well. As you're pinging the charge back and forth, resonance is going to start spawning on the ground in all of the rooms. These are the little yellow glowing pyramids. These are what you need to pick up, and everyone needs to pick them up, not just the plate people. As remember, the more you have, the more time you will get back on your clock. Note that you can only hold 3 resonance, and if you grab a 4th one, you're going to die, so pay attention to how many you have. This can be a little tricky for the plate players because they'll essentially need to send their charge and then run and grab some resonance before the charge comes back, so they don't get a subjugator. Once everyone has picked up as much resonance as possible, it's time to close the circuits and lock the plates, and you can deposit them as you're probably getting low on time. Each set of plates will have a conductor tower or pillar with the symbol glowing in the gold in the middle of it. To lock these conductors, you need to shoot the symbol while holding the matching buff, and quickly after step on the activated plate to lock it. So basically, if you're on the side with the glowing pillar, you'll send the charge back, then make sure you've grabbed at least 1 resonance, and then wait to hear your teammate saying they're sending the charge back. At this point, shoot the glowing pillar in the middle, and then when the charge reaches your plate and glows, step on it. And this will lock the charge into the pillar, completing the mechanic and stopping the ping-pong chain. Each team will need to lock their conductor to continue. When you lock it, it will take 1 stack of resonance from you, so keep that in mind. Also note, the resonances have a timer on them as well, so you need to dunk them at the end before the timer runs out or you die as well. So make sure you're doing this part relatively fast. Be sure everyone on your team has a handful of resonance, but not everyone needs ×3. You want at least 2, I would say. Once you've locked both conductors, head back to the middle and clear the room, including the mini-boss subjugator, and once everything is dead, a chest will spawn, allowing you to dunk your resonances in it, completing the round. The most time you can get is about 4 minutes and 15 seconds, so if you're getting close to that after everyone dunks their resonance, you've collected enough. Okay, so that was 1 full round. Now you need to repeat this process 2 more full times to complete this encounter. Remember, each round consists of add clear, then tormentor, then add clear, then tormentor again, then plates and ping-ponging, resonance collecting, locking conductor, subjugator, and then depositing. Once you've done 3 rounds, the stairs will drop down, you can get your loot, and you can move to the next encounter. After another series of traversals, you'll eventually reach the first boss of the raid, the Herald of Finality. To prepare, you are going to want to split your team into 3 groups of 2. 1 team will go left, 1 team will stay middle, and 1 team will go right. For subclasses, you want to spec yourself out for boss damage. Blade Barrage, Gathering Storm, or Golden Gun for Hunters, Thunder Crash, or Pyrogale, Burning Maul for Titans. Well of Radiance is very strong here, even with the nerf. If you have a plethora of Warlocks, you can also use Nova Bomb or Silk Strike as well. For weapons, I think swords are the best and easiest form of DPS. Yes, you can use Still Hunt, yes, you can use Izanagi, yes, you can use Legend of Acreus, but this boss moves a bunch and is a pain to deal with. It's a pretty simple 2-phase if everyone has on a sword and you have one way to debuff via Tractor Cannon, or maybe a Hunter Tether, or even the Divinity. There are no champions in this fight, but there are some pretty meaty yellow bars, so a good special weapon like a fusion or a grenade launcher or something can be handy. The goal here is to obviously kill the Herald of Finality, and once again, you have to do this before the final shape timer reaches 0. You're going to need to repeat similar mechanics from the last encounter to gather resonance stacks, deposit them into a chest, and this will reset the timer and allow you to damage the boss. To start, have each team split up left, middle, and right, and start clearing ads and the yellow bar that's in each area. Eventually, around the time you're killing this yellow bar, 3 players, 1 from each side, are going to get summoned to battle by the boss. At this point, those 3 players will have Call to Reckoning at the top of the screen and want to head to the middle and start shooting the boss in the head, while you dodge all the blights he throws at you. You will have a buff on your screen called Call to Reckoning, as I said. Eventually, he might go immune, though, and have this little black orb above his head, indicating he has summoned blights around the arena that must be destroyed before you can keep damaging him. So if this happens, call out that blights are up so the rest of the raid can look up in the sky or around the area and make sure all the blights are down. Once they're destroyed, he'll be damageable again, and the 3 players can finish shooting him in the face until this phase ends and that Call to Reckoning buff changes to Stolen Favor. At that point, the 3 players with stolen favor can now leave the middle and head back to their sides. When you head back, the players with stolen favor are the only players who are going to be able to see the symbol that's inside the conductor, which indicates what type of resonance is needed to close it or lock it. Recall from the first encounter, all the resonance on the ground were pyramids, and all the conductors had pyramids in them as well. But in this encounter, it'll either be pyramids or spheres. So if a conductor has a sphere in the middle of it, it needs a player with spherical resonance to lock it. And if it has a pyramid in the middle of it, it needs a player with pyramidal resonance to lock it. Each section will have 2 plates, one further back and up higher, and one down low closer to the boss. The one that's further back and up higher is the starting plate. At this point, coordinate with your partners in each area to do the same ping-ponging strategy from Encounter 1, sending the charge back and forth to spawn resonance. You'll notice both types of resonance will spawn on the ground though, and you can still only hold 3 total. You can grab different types of resonance as well. Your buff will change to whatever type you grabbed last, which is very important to note. If you pick up 2 pyramid resonance, you'll have pyramidal resonance times 2. And then if you pick up a sphere, it'll change to spherical resonance times 3. This is mostly important for whoever is going to lock the conductor because remember they need to match the resonance with the symbol in the conductor. So once everyone on all sides has grabbed 2 to 3 resonance each, you can close the circuit to lock the conductors by shooting the symbol in the conductor and then stepping on the glowing plate after the charge arrives. Now, one note here is that my team simplifies this process by intentionally failing the ping pong mechanic so that we can collect our resonance without feeling rushed. Doing so will spawn another one of those beefy yellow bar enemies on each side, Ogre on the right, Phalanx in the middle, or Wizard on the left, but it does allow you much more time to grab your resonance stack safely. If you do choose to let it fail, make sure you've ping-ponged it enough times to spawn enough resonance on your side for you both to pick up. Then go kill the yellow bar, and then redo the plate mechanic, locking it when you're ready. Note, if you fail intentionally, the symbol in the conductor can change. So make sure you're not picking up any resonance till after you failed it to see what the new symbol is, so whoever's locking it can grab the proper resonance as their last buff. Note that the players that are not locking the conductor don't need any specific type of resonance, just grab any combination of 3. The more the better. Once all 3 sides have locked their conductors, you can head to the middle of the arena to the back, where a resonance chest will spawn, and everyone will dunk their resonance to reset the final shape timer as much as possible. Then immediately head into the arena to damage the boss. Drop a well of radiance at his feet and go to town with supers, debuffs, and swords. He'll eventually go immune and you will head back to your areas and you guessed it, repeat all of this all over again. Ideally, if you've dunked enough resonance to give yourself plenty of time on the next round, but if you were short on resonance, you might be pressed for time now. Either way, you get 3 phases to get him to final stand, which he will summon the same yellow bars back to the middle arena to help him, but I would just ignore them and focus on the boss to take him out quickly. After he dies, you'll grab your loot and begin the very long traversal section to the next encounter, heading up the monolith across the branches until it lifts you to this new area, the repository. There is a secret chest in the traversal section before this third encounter on the way up. It's about 2/3 of the way through the jumping puzzle. If you get to the orange cube room, you've gone a little bit too far. Backtrack and you're going to see this area. There's a spot right around this cube you can duck under, and the chest is right there. The third encounter is probably one of the easiest in my opinion because it utilizes the same plate mechanics and shaped resonances from the first 2 fights. But it does add a third shape here, which is cube or square. In this encounter, you want to prepare with ad-clearing weapons and loadouts. There is no boss to damage here. Heavy machine guns do wonders here due to their ammo economy. You'll also want to spec for dealing with tormentors, as you'll need to kill 9 tormentors total in this encounter, so precision weapons, or something like a divinity, heavy machine guns, and even microcosm are all great. Finally, there are a few unstoppables as well, usually all together at this point, and they don't really pose a huge threat, but have a couple people on unstoppable so you can take them out quickly. This encounter is comprised of 3 rooms, each of which you'll have sets of plates you'll need to bounce the charge back and forth again, then lock 3 conductors and deposit resonance in the chest to extend the final shape looming timer, which then unlocks the door to the next room. The goal is to simply get through all 3 rooms, locking all 3 conductors in each. There are a handful of ways you can split up your team to do this, but I recommend pairing everybody up into groups of 2 again, each pair being responsible for a set of plates and 1 conductor. In each of the 3 rooms, there is an orientation of the plates where the charges go. In room 1, they are straight and can just be left, middle, and right, but in rooms 2 and 3, the wires swap locations as shown. What I think is easiest is just to keep all 3 teams of people together and have the players at the conductor end just match their partner's wire to the new location. Player 1 and Player 2 are on the left plates in the first room, with Player 2 being at the left conductor. Then in the second room, Player 1 would stay on the left, but Player 2 goes to the middle plate as this one matches Player 1's wire. The other way you can do is just keep all 6 players on the same plates in all 3 rooms and just know who they are going to be sending the charge to in rooms 2 and 3, as this person will change. In general, you'll probably be sending charges around the same time anyways, so it's not too big of a deal. Like I said, there's a lot of different ways to do it, so just pick the one that works best for your team. Alright, so how does this encounter actually work? Each of the 3 rooms have the same pattern. It starts with 3 tormentors spawning, left, middle, and right. You need to kill them quickly, due to the timer you have, and whoever gets the final blow on the tormentor will get that stolen favor buff that you saw in the second encounter. This will allow those players to see which shape is needed for each of the 3 conductor totems, and they need to call this out loud. This time there are now 3 symbols, cube, pyramid, and sphere. Once called out, each player at the plate near their conductor will know what resonance they need to lock with it. Remember, your resonance buff will stack to 3, and will be whatever the identity of the last resonance you've picked up. What makes this tricky is the resonance shapes spawn all over, and not necessarily in your section. So if you're the player needing to lock the pyramid conductor, you'll need to go find a pyramid resonance to do so. The players not locking the conductors should also be picking up resonance as well, up to 3 stacks, and it doesn't matter what shapes you grab. However, make sure that each of the conductor locking players have the resonance they need before picking up everything. If you accidentally pick up a shape that the locking player needs, you can always swap roles and do the conductor locking part yourself. Just keep that in mind. When doing the plates, I highly recommend letting it fail again after a few cycles, just like the last encounter. This will punish you by spawning a subjugator, but will give you plenty of time to run around the room and find the resonances you need in the proper shapes. Then, you can team shot the subjugator and do the plate one more time to lock the conductor. As you take out tormentors and subjugators, be wary that the orange bar turrets will spawn up on the legends and are pretty lethal, so take them out as soon as they spawn. Once all 3 conductors are locked, a chest will spawn in the middle of the room, allowing everybody to deposit their resonance to add more time to the final shape looming timer. At this point, everyone pushes to the back of the room by the door and kills all the remaining adds and the unstoppable to open the door to the next area. Keeping in mind the new pathing of the wires and the plates, keep repeating this process of killing tormentors, calling out the conductor symbols, pinging the plates, collecting resonance, and then depositing it into the chest. Once you've completed all 3 rooms without running out of time, you will get your loot and complete this encounter. Alrighty, moving on. You'll enter the Verity encounter, and this is by far the most confusing encounter of the entire raid. Combat is pretty simple here. Some Thrall, some of those flying things, a few unstoppable ogres, and some knights. Once again, ad clearing weapons and supers are all you really need. The combat is not what makes this encounter difficult. It's the mechanics and the logic. Before you get started, your Guardian's fashion is extremely important here. First, be sure all 6 players equip a ghost shell that is distinguishable from each other. Make sure you know what each ghost person has, and make sure they're all different. Secondly, make sure you can also tell each other apart from your armor. Typically, helmets and cloaks for hunters will help identify this. Make sure everyone tosses on an ornament that clearly dictates who they are. For Titans and Warlocks, sometimes an exotic helmet is a good option as well, because they're very distinctive. Once you've confirmed you know what everyone's ghost looks like and what everyone's armor looks like, you're ready to start. Unfortunately, you can't really pre-assign roles here, as people are going to get randomly teleported into different rooms throughout the encounter. There are a ton of explanations all over Reddit and the internet, and I'm going to do my best to simplify it as much as possible here. The goal of this encounter is to complete 3 rounds of saving the 3 teleported guardians that get sent to different rooms. And, once those 3 are saved, reviving all 6 players after they're frozen. That is a full round. So let's go through what a full round looks like. At the start of the encounter, 3 Guardians are going to get teleported into their own identical looking rooms, and each of them will be by themselves. We call these 3 players the inside players. The remaining 3 players will stay together in the main room, which we will call the outside team. The 3 inside players need to escape their rooms. They escape their rooms by each making a key with the right combination of shapes. This will allow them to walk through the crystal barrier in the front by the spawn area, which is currently blocked. While they are doing this, making their keys, the outside team is also needing to make sure they prepare the lock for each inside player to match the key they're making. So let's cover how the inside team is going to work first. So how do you make your correct key? As soon as your inside players get teleported in, they're going to notice each of them will have the same 3 statues, left, middle, and right. And all 3 of these statues will be holding a 2D shape, a triangle, a circle, or a square. One of these 3 statues will look just like you, and the other 2 will look just like the other 2 Guardians who got teleported inside to their rooms. First, one of the inside players, and it doesn't matter which because all 3 inside players have the same statues in their rooms, call out from left to right the 2D shapes the statues are holding, because this is going to be important for the outside team to do their job. Step 2. Look for your Guardian statue and make note of the symbol they are holding. The other 2 inside players are going to be doing the same thing. Now, once you've called out all 3 symbols on the statues for the outside team and have noted what 2D shape your Guardian is holding, the final thing you need to make note of is the 2D symbols that will be flashing on the wall. The symbols flashing on the wall are the symbols that can drop from the Orange Bar Knights when they are killed. So, if you see a triangle and a circle flashing up on your wall, anytime you kill a knight in your room, it will drop either a triangle or a circle. Alright? Still with me? Okay, so how do you actually build the key? To build your key to escape, you need to be holding in your possession the 2 symbols that your Guardian statue isn't holding. So, if your Guardian statue in your inside room is holding a triangle, then you need to collect both a circle and a square. Remember, to build the key, you actually have to pick up the shapes that are dropped on the ground by the knight. If they are flashing on the wall, that means they have the potential to drop from the knights, but you don't actually have them in your possession until you kill the knight and pick them up. Now, there are a few ways to acquire the symbols you need along with the other 2 inside players that are solo as well. This is the way I recommend doing it, and it's in a 2-step process. The first step is to actually get the wall to flash with the same symbol your Guardian is holding, and get rid of any shape that your Guardian isn't holding. I know that seems opposite of what I just told you, but ultimately we're going to end up at the same place, so just bear with me. So, for that first phase, if your Guardian is holding a triangle, the first step is to make note of any symbols that aren't a triangle flashing on the wall. Then, kill the knights, pick up the symbols that aren't a triangle, and give them to the matching Guardian. So for example, if in this step your wall is flashing triangle and circle, and your Guardian is holding a triangle, you want to keep that triangle on the wall, but you want to get rid of the circle. So, kill a knight. If it drops a circle, pick that circle up and deposit it into the statue of the Guardian that's holding the circle. This is essentially gifting that player a circle onto their wall of shapes, which again is what we're trying to do in this first step of combining to make your key. If all 3 inside players do this, then the Guardian whose statue is holding triangle should have 2 triangles flashing on their wall. The Guardian statue who's holding circle should have 2 circles flashing on their wall, and the Guardian statue who's holding square should have 2 squares flashing on their wall. Now, step 2 is to then take that symbol that's now flashing on your wall and dish it out to the other 2 Guardians. And in doing so, if all 3 Guardians do this, you will ultimately end up with the 2 shapes that you need. So back to our example where your Guardian is holding triangle, and you now have 2 triangles flashing on the wall, you want to kill the first knight, pick up the triangle that it drops, and deposit it into one of the other Guardian statues, giving it to them. Then kill the second knight, and deposit the second triangle into the other Guardian statue. Essentially, giving both of your triangles away to each of the other 2 players. While you're doing this, the other 2 inside players are doing the same thing with their shapes, and the result is all 3 inside players will have 2 shapes flashing on their wall that don't match what their statue is holding. Then, finally, kill the final 2 knights and pick up both of those shapes so that you can escape, because that's your key. All right, whew. Now that's a mouthful. Hopefully you get the idea. A quick refresher. 3 players are going to get randomly teleported into solo rooms, which we call the inside players. They will see 3 statues holding 2D shapes. Call them out left to right for the outside team, and then work to build your key. First by acquiring all of the same symbol your guardian's holding, and then giving each of those shapes one away to the other 2 guardians so that everyone ultimately has one of each shape they need, not matching your statue. Then, kill the knights to pick up those shapes and to escape through the crystal wall. Now, while all 3 inside players are doing this, what is the outside team doing? They will also be in the same kind of room, except the 3 guardian statues in the middle room, or the outside room, will have 3D shapes instead of 2D shapes. These 3D shapes are the combination of 2 2D shapes. For example, a cone is a combination of a triangle and a circle, a prism is the combination of a triangle and a square, a cylinder is a circle and a square, and so on as shown. The goal of the outside team is for each guardian to hold a 3D shape that doesn't contain the 2D shape the inside team statue is holding in that same spot. So, for example, when the inside players get teleported in and they look at their 3 statues left to right, they might see triangle left, circle middle, and square right. So based on this example, the statues on the outside teams must have 3D shapes where the left doesn't have a triangle, the middle doesn't have a circle, and the right doesn't have a square. You also don't want your 3D shapes to contain the same symbol either. So it can't be 2 squares, 2 circles, or 2 triangles. Ultimately, thinking of it another way, if the inside player on the left has triangle above their statue, that means they need circle and square to build their key. And that means the outside team must make the same left statue in their room contain that same circle and square 3D shape as the keyhole or the lock, which is a cylinder. Now, all or some of the 3D shapes at the start will likely be wrong and contain shape combinations that are incorrect. The goal here is to dissect the 2D shapes out of each 3D shape to swap them around. You do this by interacting with the statues. So, for example, if the left statue is a cone, which is a circle and a triangle, but say you want to get rid of the triangle out of that shape. You kill a knight, and if it drops a triangle, pick up the triangle off the ground and then go to that statue and dissect it by interacting. This tells the statue that you want to take the triangle out of it. Now, the symbol swap is primed, but you need a second shape to swap with it. So, if you're taking triangle from it, but you want to give it a square, then you'll need to kill a knight that gets a square to drop from it, pick up the square from the ground, and go to a different statue that contains a square that you also don't want. This will cause those 2 shapes to swap with each other, and the 3D shapes will change. You need to keep dissecting and swapping the 3D shapes until all 3 of them are correct. So let's go back to our example where we said the inside team is calling out triangle left, circle middle, and square right, which means the outside team needs a cylinder left, a prism middle, and a cone right. Whichever inside statue is holding a triangle, the final outside 3D shape needs to be a cylinder. Whichever inside statue is holding a circle, the final outside 3D shape needs to be a prism. And whichever inside statue is holding a square, the outside 3D shape needs to be a cone. So as I said in our example, we need cylinder left, prism middle, and cone right. But say we have pyramid left, cylinder middle, and cylinder right. This means we need to get rid of the triangles that are on left, we need to get rid of the circle in middle, and we need to get rid of the square that's on the right. So first, kill a knight. If it drops a triangle, pick it up and stick it into the left statue to charge it to remove that triangle. Then kill another knight, and if it drops a circle, we know we need to get rid of the circle in the middle. So deposit it in middle, and this will swap the triangle from left, give it to mid, and the circle from mid, and give it to left. Now, we'll have a triangle plus circle, which is a cone on the left, triangle plus square, which is a prism in the middle, and we'll still have a cylinder on the right. Now, we need to swap again, because the left still has a triangle in it that we don't need, and the right still has a square in it we don't need. So again, kill knights, And if they drop a triangle, deposit it in the left statue. And if killing a knight, pick up a square and drop it in the right statue, swapping those 2D shapes and changing the 3D shapes. Now the left will be a square and a circle, which is a cylinder. Mid will be a triangle and a square still, which is a prism. And right will now become a circle plus a triangle, which is a cone. Now, all the 3D shapes are correct. And once they are, the inside players with their correct matching keys in hand, with the combination of 2D shapes, will be able to go through the crystal wall in their solo rooms and join the team backed by the rally flag. Whew. One note about the knights and the shapes they drop is that it's different between the inside team and the outside team. On the inside team, the only shapes the knights can drop are the ones that are on the wall. However, the outside team, there are 3 knights that are static that always drop the same shape. The left knight will always drop circle, the middle knight will always drop triangle, and the right knight will always drop square. If you're not getting any knights, there's a couple reasons for that. One, you may have ogres up that you need to kill to get the knights to respawn. Or you might still be holding shapes, or shapes still might be on the ground. If this is the case, you need to deposit them or wait for them to despawn so that you can get more knights to spawn. That's essentially the explanation of the keys and the keyholes via the shapes. You do need to complete 3 rounds of this to finish. However, there are 2 more pieces I haven't covered yet. First, Bungie decided that swapping shapes wasn't confusing enough. So here's where having a notable ghost and notable armor and fashion will come into play. During the shape swapping process, all 3 inside players will get pretend killed and will need to be revived by the outside players to continue their shape swapping. Their ghosts will appear in the outside room for the outside players to interact with them and pick them up. They must pick up your ghost and take it back to the entrance and dunk it in the statue that matches your guardian. Only, they can't see which statue is which. The dead players will need to be able to see one of the different guardian statues illuminated and call out its location. So the players with the ghosts can go to the correct statue and insert it. If they insert it into the correct statue, it'll bring the player back to life to continue their process. If they put it into the wrong statue, they will die. And finally, the final mechanic of each round, after all 3 guardians have escaped their solo or inside rooms, and the 3D shapes are correct, is all 6 players will head back to the arena together for one final wave of ads and unstoppables. Finally, 5 players are going to get fake killed with only 1 player up to start reviving. Just like earlier, only 1 player of each can see the statue locations of a different player, and you have 60 seconds to do this. So, listen for the people that are dead to call out the locations of different guardians. And, once you know where one is, grab their ghost, which is in front of their body, take it to the correct statue, which revives them. Now you have 2 players to start reviving. So, quickly start reviving each other and be sure you're communicating which statue you see and who they are. Once all 6 players have been revived, that completes 1 full round. And you need to do 3 full rounds to complete the encounter. I highly recommend either having a cheat sheet up or a piece of scrap paper, or maybe even one of those handy solver tools that are all over Reddit that people have built. You can do this on your phone or on a piece of paper. It's going to take some practice to get the feel of what the shapes are and how to swap them, especially trying to imagine or picture what the 3D shapes are combinations of and what you need to remove. Now, you've finished Verity, you'll start the ascent to the top of the monoliths to take on the final encounter, the Witness himself. On the way is a second hidden chest about 2/3 of the way up in this hidden room as shown. Alright, so to prepare for the Witness, everyone's going to want to stack DPS-based loadouts. Hunters shine with Celestial Nighthawk and Golden Gun, and the Still Hunt Sniper Rifle. Warlocks can run Nova Bomb or a good linear fusion rifle, or even Still Hunt as well, and Titans don't really have a decent super to damage the Witness except maybe the new Void Super, and also linear fusion rifles are great, and Still Hunt as well. He has a very large crit spot, so precision weapons are key here. To prepare, you're going to want to pre-assign 2 or maybe 3 players to be runners, and 3 or 4 players to be on ad clear. When I say 2 or 3 runners, ideally you can go with 3 people to speed things up, but 2 people can totally do this as well. The adds can be a little overwhelming at times with the void shielded chieftains, screebs, subjugators, and attendants, so adjust if you need. This fight is actually a lot simpler than some of the previous encounters, especially Verity. The difficulty here is surviving during the damage phase and understanding the witness's attacks while you're doing it. Split your group up, with some players focusing left and some players focusing right. The goal for the running phase is for the runners to acquire the Glyph Breaker buff, and use that buff to pop the buttons that's on the witness's chest. Popping all 6 of them will start the damage phase. So when the fight starts, the runners will notice 3 hand orientations all over the arena with different attacks. The hand coming up out of the ground will correlate to the circular resonance. The hand coming down from the sky correlates to the triangular or pyramidal resonance, and the hand coming from across the side of the arena correlates to square or hexahedron resonance. To get the Glyph Breaker buff, you first have to step into the attack that matches a specific hand, and shoot the wristband of that hand. For example, to shoot the wristband of the hand coming up out of the ground, briefly step into the circle resonance, which randomly will appear all over the place, and while inside it, shoot the wristband. When you do this, the color of the wristband will reveal a color and a shape on it. The shape will not be circle in this case, as you were standing in the circle to shoot it. So, it'll either be a red square or a green triangle wristband. The color and shape of this bracelet indicates the type of resonance buff you need to have to be able to break the bracelet and get Glyph Breaker. So, if you stand in that same circle buff, shoot the hand coming out of the ground, and the bracelet shows a green triangle, that means your next step is to go get the pyramidal resonance buff. You do this by briefly standing in attack that matches what you need. So if you need pyramidal resonance, you go look for the triangular attack on the ground and stand in it briefly until you get pyramidal resonance times 1. Now that you have the resonance that's correct, go shoot the bracelet again standing in the resonance to quickly break the wrist and get Glyph Breaker. Then, with Glyph Breaker, go to the middle and shoot a button off his chest. Note that the square attack is sideways and doesn't have an actual indicator that it's square, but that's where you get square or hexahedral resonance, looking for the horizontal lines and stepping in them as it shoots. A few other notes about this process. First, that each attack can kill you if you're in them for too long, so be careful. If you're jumping into the circle resonance, those taken bees or darkness bees can come down and kill you. And if you're standing in the triangle resonance, the triangle can explode and kill you as well. Secondly, you cannot hold more than ×3 resonance or you die like the earlier encounters. So you'll have to dip in and out of the resonance attacks quickly as you shoot the hands. Otherwise, you could gain more resonance and you could die. It's best to identify both where the hand you need to shoot is and where the buff is on the ground before you jump in. That way you can step in and shoot it in one fell swoop. Thirdly, if you're on ad clear and you accidentally get resonance by standing in one of the attacks, you will die with it if the timer reaches 0. However, you can get cleansed of this by going to the middle platform when a Glyph Breaker button is shot, and it removes all of your resonance. So if you accidentally get resonance, call it out and have a runner go with you to the mid and cleanse you when they shoot one of the buttons. Remember that you need 6 Glyph Breaker buffs to destroy 6 buttons. There are videos online of people breaking more than one button with a single buff. It can be a little tricky, but the idea is you need 6 buffs to get 6 buttons. One other note about the running phase is speed. So unfortunately, you don't have forever to get the buffs. So you step in your buff to shoot the hand and it reveals which color you need. You need to go hunt down the resonance buff that you need very quickly. Get the resonance and then get back to the hand to shoot it to break the glyph. Otherwise, it could disappear and change. If this happens and you're stuck with a resonance that you don't necessarily need, you have a couple options. One, you can just guess on one of the wrists that doesn't match yours. So for example, if you have circular resonance, find either the triangle or the square hand and shoot it and see if it works. If it gives you Glyph Breaker, that's awesome. You can run to the middle and pop one of the buttons. If you don't get it, well, you can run to the other wrist and try to pop it. Otherwise, you can call out for another runner to take you to the middle if you're getting too high on resonance, and you can get cleansed and run back and start over. The last thing before damage phase is the witness will attempt to wipe the raid with a ground attack. While the runners are shooting wristbands and destroying the witness hands, eventually, and randomly, one of them is going to squeal with an audio trigger. This is the shape that is needed to stop the ground attack that's going to try to wipe the raid. So if one of the runners shoots a circle wristband and it squeals, then you know you need to make a circle to stop the witness from killing everyone. He'll spawn a bunch of darkness crystals in front of him, and you'll need to shoot the correct ones to make the correct shape. As shown, the black nodes are the ones that need to be shot for each symbol. If you shoot the wrong node, or take too long, the witness will essentially tether you to the ground, light it on fire, and kill everyone. If done correct, it'll say on screen that you foiled the witness's plans, and he'll light the ground on fire with an audio cue, pushing his hands forward, but you can jump in the air to avoid it. So pay attention to this, and call out when he's charging this attack, and count 3, 2, 1, jump, so everyone can jump together to avoid it. Warlocks and Titans have it easiest here as they can stay in the air for a little longer. Note that during the running phase, subjugators will spawn on the left and right each time a button is destroyed, so I recommend not wasting a ton of ammo on them until most of the buttons are gone. Just try to avoid them and use cover and keep them distracted from the runners. Once you have the last glyph breaker buff and are ready to burst the last button, call for everyone to come mid and get ready for DPS. Shoot the button and the platform will rise up and the witness chest will open and become damageable. This will be your DPS phase. Unload precision weapons and supers and everything you can. During DPS though, the witness is going to do some attacks, making you very uncomfortable and keep you moving around. While the goal here is to obviously damage the boss, it's very important you save some res tokens for here by not dying, so make sure you're paying attention. If you've done the Excision 12-man activity, he does some similar attacks. He does 3 rounds of attacks, each round consisting of him attacking one half of the plate, forcing you to move left or right, and 2 rounds of lighting the ground on fire, which you need to jump. You can either watch his hands or just look at the ground for what he lights up in darkness and move the opposite way. So, DPS will start, get a few shots in, and then look at the ground. If he's attacking front left, then you need to move back right. His second attack will always be the opposite of his first attack. So again, in that example, if he attacks front left first, he'll then attack back right second. While he's doing those left and right attacks, you'll also hear a screech, and he'll push his other hands forward to light the ground on fire. When he does this, you need to jump as nowhere on the ground is safe. He will often do this attack during a left or right attack as well. So one of the groups of attacks could look something like attack from left first, attack back right second, and do a ground attack, which requires a jump. It's going to take some practice and can be frustrating, but after a few runs, you will definitely understand the pattern and the sound and video cues and be able to do more damage. If you survive all his attacks and DPS is over, he'll take a hand and smack the whole platform, sending you flying and killing you, so after 3 rounds of attacks, get a few final shots in and then get out. At this point, you will repeat the whole thing all over again. You get 3 total phases to finish him off until Final Stand. During Final Stand, he'll briefly go immune and open his chest up again and continue those left and right attacks in a very short window to finish him off. Otherwise, he becomes immune and you wipe. So I highly recommend saving a super or 2 for the Final Stand to burst him down quickly. Once you take him down, you're going to be rewarded with your loot, and congratulations, you have completed Salvation's Edge. Thank you so much for watching today, Guardians, and I hope this video was helpful. Please leave a comment, give us a like, and consider subscribing, and we will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.